Hello again, and welcome back to our conversation. I'm here with my friend and colleague Jillian, where we use our professional knowledge and parenting experiences to give you tips on raising socially conscious kids. So I'm starting with a question. What do we say to our child after they say, hey, look, she has dark skin?
Right? That's the reaction. Like, oh my gosh, my kid just said something
Fine.
so embarrassing.
Out loud with a finger and pointing.
Always with a finger. Kids put that away. Yeah, there's a lot of responses that you think of later after the moment. And so what we hope you end up with today are some ideas of what you can say so that next time that happens, you don't have to suffer through this moment of like feeling embarrassed, but like just acknowledging your kid is noticing something that's very real about another person, like their skin color, something that's very obvious, and that there's nothing wrong with having dark skin, right? That's the message we want to convey. There's nothing wrong with this that you're noticing. And so I need to act like there's nothing wrong with it. Because if you silence it or shush it or ignore it or say like, we don't say that, like they get the message that it's bad to have dark skin or to have any kind of difference that they might notice and want to point out. So what I have said and what I encourage people to say when they ask me that exact same question is just comment on it and say like, yes, that person does have darker skin than us. Look, our skin or your skin or my skin, if you have a different skin color than your child, is kind of this color, but theirs is kind of that color. And you just like leave it there with just give them a word for it. A color word, or you might want to say like, right, some people who are Black people have a darker brown skin or a lighter brown skin. And some people who are white people have a very pale brown or a peachy colored skin. And if you are so inclined, you might want to add and we don't really talk about other people's bodies out in public, right? Because you might not want to entertain that conversation in public. So if your kid comments on somebody's size or face or color, and it's not something that you want to engage with in public, you just start to just casually fill in that lesson of we don't talk about people's bodies in public. That's something that you can ask me about later, but not in a shaming way, just in some things are at home conversations, some things are out in public conversations.
Right. Which is okay for children to learn, especially as they're discovering so many differences in the world. And I have been in those situations with my children as well. And as an educator and a mom, my initial reaction, because of, I guess, how I was raised and what the kind of outside world has said to me is like, shh. And shushing is part of the problem, because what we know at this age, in many age stages of early childhood development, they're going to be noticing differences. And if we want children to hug those differences, shushing is not the way to go. And if you ever watch children together, they can really talk to each other. If you're maybe a parent and you're in the background, they're having a play date, you're watching them in a classroom with their friends, they can pick out differences and just keep moving on. They're very accepting. They're very, right. Let me find out and let's move on because I want to have fun with you, or I want to try this new thing over here with you.
Right.
And so even as a parent, even as uncomfortable as it may make you feel, it's important for us to say what comes out next is, yes, yeah, there's different.
Isn't that great?
It's not just we're all the same inside. We are beautiful human beings inside, but we are different on the outside. Some people wear glasses, some people don't. Some people have curly hair, some people don't. It's amazing how they see it. They really want concrete, simple answers.
They do. They're really, like, kids are truly hardwired to see differences. That is literally how they are designed. That is how you can teach a 2-year-old colors, right? They see the colors of the blocks. Obviously, they see the color of people. So the more that you treat it as just as normal as the difference of a color of blocks, that's how they're going to grow up. I often think of it as a very like 90s way of raising your children to think of color blindness.
Mhm.
Like, we don't see color. That's how I was raised. We don't see color, even though, we were in a mixed race household and we did talk about color. It was still just a part of the sort of the ethos around us. Like, color blindness is the way to racial unity. And if you look around at the world right now in 2021, it didn't work out. We kind of let that one fall flat. And so it's time to get over color blindness and recognize that, like, knowing that your children see the racial differences, accepting that and being cool with it, and using that as your platform for talking about actual racial unity is probably going to be a little bit more effective rather than going against what is developmentally hardwired into them.
Yes. And it takes away the shamefulness of noticing a difference, right? And if we put this on anything else, whether it's like what we talked about before, a religious type of outerwear that somebody may wear, or skin
Mm-hmm.
color, is that there's not a shame in understanding it, knowing it, because the shame piece, the quiet piece, is what we know begins to maybe faster these ideas that people aren't okay if they're
Right.
different. And it's funny. I was thinking, raising my children are teens, but like introducing different types of people with different types of skin colors and hair textures. And now my kids are teens. There's so many even more ways to do that through books. And the books don't necessarily have to say, look at this skin color and look at that skin color. It means introducing books by Black authors, by authors from, the Middle East, by authors, from all over that depict different types of people in different areas, but also in the United States, where we have these different types of characters that we can see and relate to and say, oh yeah, the world is a very big place with lots of different people in it.
Right. If you're not one of those people who's lucky enough to live in an area where there's a lot of diversity that they can see walking around the grocery store, you can fabricate that with the way that you choose to live your life in your house. Like those books that show all different types of people, is like your first and easiest way to expose your children. And then you don't have to wait for them to notice that there's people who look different than them in the book. You can just say it, right? The same as if you're reading the book and you point to the apple that the caterpillar's eating and say the apple is red and the pear is green. You could be looking at a different book and saying, oh, this person has long hair and this person has short hair. This person has a dark brown skin. This person has a light brown skin. This person's eyes are blue. This person's eyes are green, right? You're pointing out all these differences and just giving language and just comfort, just ease into it. And I got to say, like, you're increasing your child's comfort, right? But you're also increasing your own comfort because you were probably raised to be colorblind as well. And it's probably a little helpful for you to get practice in feeling that word in your mouth: brown skin, Black person, African American. Which is another thing. How do you know what to say about people if you don't know what they prefer? Get comfortable with not always being comfortable. You might not know. You might be referring to somebody who's African American. They might come to you and say, actually, I prefer to be referred to as Black because my family is we come from a different country where I identify with that country instead of just general African American label. That's okay. It's okay to get it a little bit wrong and to learn and respond respectfully to being taught something different. You can tell your kids that too. You can point to the book literally and say, this person has brown skin. This might be an African American person, or sometimes they prefer to be called a Black person, or if they're in a different country, we might call them a Black person. And this person's has brown skin, but maybe they're Indian American, right? You can just give all these ideas that there's lots of different ways to talk about people. It doesn't have to be the right way because there is no right way. Get them comfortable, get yourself comfortable with all the variety that's in it.
Absolutely. I think the parenting piece of the right way, we were even discussing in our last time together, and it comes straight into raising children who are socially conscious. if we think there's only one right way to raise children who have kind of open minds and are accepting of others, there isn't. You live in a different family than I live in a different location. And so we're each going to have to, and we've had different experiences, we're each going to have to, introduce this and make this a part of our parenting strategy while we're with our children and growing with them. And that it's okay to say, I'm not quite sure. My kids used to say that they did not want to call somebody Black, and because they felt like it was bad, and they wanted to call their friends brown or African American. And this was probably more in a first grade type scenario. And so we talked about how it's really up to the friend and not them to decide what was okay to call them and what wasn't. Now, there are definitely things that aren't okay to call people, right? But when we're talking about the differences in skin, and if children are old enough to be in those peer groups now, to find out, where are you from? And what do you do? And where did your family come from? And eventually, when you become friends with people or acquaintances in a classroom, you start to learn what they would prefer to be talked about as, whether it is Black or African American, or if they are from Pakistan. You don't need to be the person to make that label. However, again, you don't want to shame that conversation. I let them have it and say, great, you don't want to hurt someone's feelings, but we want to allow that person to give us some information. And the more we learn about somebody, the more we know. And in early childhood, though, that filter isn't there. So they're going to blurt out things like, why is her skin different than mine? Why is he taller than whatever it might be? And sometimes it can be really tough in your own inner space that you feel your child has disrespected somebody. But really stepping back and saying, this is learning, and I need to show up for this learning, even if I don't know myself.
Right. Showing up for the learning. I love that. It's so relevant, especially when children do notice differences, they also notice differences in behavior. So if they are starting to absorb some of the nonverbal messages of the culture around us, of discrimination and prejudice, sometimes they say prejudiced things about people they don't know. They haven't been taught something hateful. We often say like, oh, the parents taught them that. But if you're the parents and your kid says that to you about somebody of a different race being bad or can't play with them because of their race, I mean, as a parent, that's devastating. But you need to ease into the moment of teaching. And one of the safest ways to engage with that without shaming, right? Because they don't know that they're saying something terrible. They're practicing an idea that they think they've learned and trying to see if it's real or not. You can question it, right? Questioning is a powerful tool. What makes you think that way? Or what makes you say that? Well, you say that kids who are, Asian and Black can't play together, but you saw my friend Tina, and she and I, we hang out and we're Black and Asian. So that must not be right. It must be true that people of different races can be friends, right? You're just adding doubt into the theory that they're trying to solidify. Add just enough doubt to disrupt it.
Absolutely.
Especially at young ages, because that means a lot. Disrupting a beginning theory can sort of just explode it and let it be open for them to draw new conclusions.
Absolutely. That's a great way to think about it as well. And that their thought is not something that it has been, brewing inside and now is a racist being in there. It's that it's someone whose brain is developing so quickly. They're being introduced to so many different places, whether it's school and the grocery store and whatever it might be in their lives. They're trying to put things into boxes. We all do. But could we help our kids classify and put things into boxes, but also recognize that one isn't better than the other. It's
Right.
just different.
Right. And think of the power of a young kid understanding racial differences who's then later able to understand that like we aren't all the same, right? Like that means that not only do you look different, but you have different ways of interacting with the world. You have different ways that the world interacts with you.
Yeah.
So imagine a third grader being able to understand that their friend of a different race is treated differently by the teacher than they are for a specific reason. What a powerful ally that child has a chance to become, right? If a white kid understands that a black kid might be discriminated against in school, when they see it, they can say something versus a kid who doesn't understand why that happened to their friend.
Right. Or the one that, because they don't understand that there's some differences in how certain people are treated, say, well, he must have been acting up. He must be bad. He just can't control himself. Instead of looking at the bigger picture at that point. So it's small pieces of conversation and introduction that allow children to literally play with the ideas of differences, and that differences are okay. And we can talk about them. They don't need to be, shushed and put away, because when we talk about them, it will become a lifelong conversation.
Mm-hmm. And, as we talk, I'm noticing like in my head, I keep thinking about teaching white children about other races. And I'm questioning myself, are we having the wrong conversation here? And the thing is that lots of non-white kids already know about other races.
Yeah.
They've learned it. They've been taught it. It's been told, they've seen it because their whole world is focused on people who aren't like them. Right. So they children of color are more likely to see race from a younger age and understand more about it, whether those understandings are right or wrong, or if they're just still based in theories. And so it is really catching up our white children and our white presenting children to be on that same level of seeing and understanding it so that we can have a functional conversation around it, especially in schools.
It really is. And I am speaking to that because that's who I am and who I was with young kids and with teenagers, that I'm trying to raise my white children to be an ally. And it's catch up time. That's what it is. It's way past time. So that you're right. Their friends of color have had to look at differences because it was right in their faces in every day. But I've chosen to, because I want to live in a world where my children start to change this system, that it was an intentional awkward for me inside, but intentional learning with them and making sure we were having these conversations and these experiences, so that when they move on later on, and I do have several circumstances that I've hit where I thought my kids are there now, they're allies, they're up and they're acting, but I think that's where I'm at as a parent in this conversation.
Yeah, same. I'm right there with you. I mean, my kids are younger, but because they're white presenting, and I want them to be able to like walk out into the streets and be good allies and see discrimination where it's happening and be ready to stop it.
Absolutely.
That's the goal.
And it's good people in the world.
Want to put out good people.
Yeah, good people in the world.
All right. So thank you all for listening in on our conversation. We hope that you've taken some ideas and are thinking about how you're putting out good people into the world. And we look forward to seeing you back here next time when we're going to continue the conversation about raising socially conscious kids.